Well, hello everyone. Welcome to our sixth episode of our show, Tawheed, Spiritual Unity of the Three Principles. Today we have a special guest with us, Greg Suchy, and he's a addiction coach and a co-host of alcohol addiction and the Three Principles. And today we're going to talk about the oneness of addiction recovery. And when I was thinking about addiction, from my experience, I haven't had much experience with that because luckily enough, I wasn't addicted to any substance. But I noticed that I was addicted to my thinking, and that's also an addiction. And um, and when I look at it in a deeper way, I see that this is the only thing that people are addicted to is their worry thinking, because to me, when people use alcohol, for example, or cocaine or drugs to get over their thinking, it's a way for them to kind of be present and not engage much with their thinking. So they are looking to bring more of the happy thinking and get rid of the bad negative thinking. But there is a misunderstanding here that I see that we all experience, is that people usually don't know where their feelings are coming from. And I think that's the one cause and one solution for all human addiction problems, really. So saying that, I'll give it over to Harry, who got really a lot to say about this topic. And of course, after that, Greg Suchy.
Okay. Well, thanks, Omar. And yeah, I'm really pleased Greg is here today to share his understanding, in-depth understanding, because he was addicted and had a spiritual experience that dropped the urge very, very quickly. This experience was very, very deep. One of the things that was interesting coming to the show was there a different flavor with the Muslim community rather than with the non-Muslim community with regards to addiction and alcoholism, and of course the other addictive issues like overeating or undereating and many things created through anxiety and worry. And it turned out there is. The Muslim community hides it a little bit more, and it's a cultural. What's the right word when a Muslim disagrees with something, like the community disagrees with something? I don't want to use the word sin. It's not a sin, but you know what I mean, Omar. What would be the right word for that?
You mean in Arabic?
No, I mean in English.
Oh, well, when they disagree, I don't know. There is no
Anyway,
specific.
it's not a popular topic, and that has been true, by the way, in our group. It was very popular because it was keyed in on addiction and alcoholism. People came with that specific reason. But whenever I took it outside of our group, it wasn't a popular topic because people actually don't want to be seen or identified with that type of feeling in regards to it. And I think that was doubly true in the Muslim community, where they definitely do not want to be identified with this in any way, because it's considered against what Muhammad was teaching and so on. That type of feeling helped me to understand all the people that I'm working with, because of course they feel a bit uncomfortable with the fact that they're having difficulty with something that they cannot seem to understand or control. And in that regard, Greg is very, very beautiful in being able to explain those types of things. And the one thing that Greg and I talked yesterday with a small group, and he talked about the oneness that is part of our topic. So Greg Suchy is co-host of the Addiction, Alcoholism, and Three Principles. We've worked together for 3.5 years or so. We did 78 shows. We've done a lot, and which has been converted into podcasts, etc. But the most important thing is we've learned from each other. The rest of it is just, well, that's nice. And of course, that's what people want to hear. But the relevance is, can we learn from listening to Greg? And his experience, perhaps, Greg, you could talk about the oneness and maybe a little bit about your experience, just because the crowd doesn't know who you are, etc. And go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Harry and Omar. So first of all, Omar, you're spot on with the only addiction really is to thought. And we can use different ways to try to disrupt that thought, and try to escape it. And that can be drugs and alcohol, but it can also be shopping and gambling and scrolling through Facebook nonstop. And, there's any number of ways that we can express those addictive thought patterns. And for me, it turned into pretty much all of those, food and, drugs and alcohol and, sex and shopping and whatever, because even with shopping, when you go out and you buy something new, you feel better for a short time.
Everything. But again, it is our.
So my experience changed back in 2012 when I was in Alcoholics Anonymous for about 5 months at that point. And I went to a meeting for a holiday in the United States. We have Thanksgiving and they would rent out a school gymnasium and host this gratitude meeting. And the idea was everybody would get 30 seconds to say what they're grateful for, and just go on to the next person. And there was about 200 people there, and the feeling in that room was just outstanding. Just that everybody expressing that gratitude and love, and just such amazing feelings. And at the end of the meeting, when we all joined hands to say a prayer, when I touched the people next to me, I was no longer there in physical form. And I saw the energy behind life. And I saw that formless source energy and the way that everything is connected and that we're all one. Even the chair you're sitting on and the computer in front of you, everything's made out of that same source energy. It's just manifested physically in a different form. And we all come from that same source energy. We're still a part of it, even in this human experience. And at some point when we leave this human experience, we return to that source energy. So we're never really truly disconnected from it, except that we create this illusion that we are separate. And that's part of the human experience. And that's part of the learning process that we have to go through is to really just drop that conditioned thinking that we've been trained by, society and friends and family and everybody that we've come into contact with in our lives. They've all kind of added a little piece to the story of me. That story of who I am and what I believe and what life should be like and shouldn't be like and all that kind of stuff. So it's the oneness of it isn't something we have to get to. We're already there. We've just created that illusion that seems like we're not there. And so the real process of addiction recovery isn't about attaining anything. It's not about becoming something or somebody new. It's really about becoming willing to let go of that story that we've created and to notice what is already there, which is that source energy, that some call God, some call, you know, Great Spirit. There's any number of terms for it, but we're all pointing at the same thing. And the reason we all feel called to that is because it is within us. We're all a part of it, you know, and part of that story that we pick up is, you know, a habit of looking for stressful thinking or anxious thinking or you know, any kind of, you know, like negative feelings that we don't really want to have. And some of us do reach out for, you know, chemicals or anything to just distract us from that long enough to feel like we can enjoy life for a little while. But the problem with especially, you know, the chemicals, you know, drugs and alcohol, and even, you know, when we do things like the gambling and shopping and sex and stuff like that, our bodies are producing those chemicals, the norepinephrine and serotonin and dopamines and all of that kind of stuff, the feel-good chemicals. But, you know, especially with the drugs and alcohol, we build up a tolerance to those chemicals, and we get less relief unless we use more. And that's when it really starts to become a problem, because when you're using more, you end up with more side effects. And because your tolerance is higher, you're not getting that relief as deeply as you used to, or for as long as you used to. So then it just turns into this vicious cycle of, I need to do more to get back to that place where I wanted to be in the first place. When the reality of it is, all that's happening is that those chemicals are helping us to drop that story for a little while. And if we just learn to become willing to let go of who we think we are, we can do that without those chemicals. And just looking at the oneness of life and of everything. Yeah, that's really where it's at. And you know, practicing that self-love and self-care and learning to be gentle with ourselves when, you know, if we do have a little setback.
I have a question. Greg and I were speakers at the latest 3P recovery conference, virtual conference. And one of the key questions that was the most confusing for others to answer was the power of an urge. And so the question I have for you, Greg, is it possible to leave that urge in a quick second, or like forever, or in a way that brings freedom from that urge?
Oh, absolutely. Because what that urge really is our inner self, our internal guidance system telling us that we're off track. It's saying that, you know, we're entertaining thinking that isn't really useful, that isn't producing those good feelings that we really want to have. And if one of the interesting things is, everybody I work with, when we really get into looking at when you start feeling better, everybody has agreed that you start feeling better when you make the decision to use your drugs or alcohol or whatever. It's long before you actually get drunk or high that you start feeling better. So that's the key indicator that it's really not the chemicals that are doing what you want them to do. It's that you've changed your thought process. Just knowing that you're about to have a drink or whatever is enough to disrupt that and to allow you to sink a little bit deeper into your true self. So the more that we practice realizing that and just noticing it, you know, becoming that observer and noticing that, you know what, I already feel better just making that decision. So then just try going without it that time. And sometimes you'll be successful and sometimes you won't. And when you are not, don't beat yourself up over it. Don't be hard on yourself. Just realize that it's that habitual thought pattern. You've practiced it for so long that it's going to maybe take a little bit of time, or an insight what can happen and you can instantly change that. It just, everything changes in a quick moment. But we can also just practice when that comes up, just paying attention to what's going on, and just seeing that process is all that needs to happen. You don't need to actually do anything about it. It's more of an observation.
I'd like to draw an example of that. I have a client who's heroin and fentanyl, and in the first 6 sessions, he relapsed 3 times. And in that relapse, how did I deal with it? Ignored it. I didn't try to get more information about why he did it. I didn't want to get him to see how he failed and so on. And each time, which is very interesting, Greg, he came back humble. We had a show on humbleness, but he came back, his ears were open, like he had been kicked in the bum, excuse the expression, and he was ready to move forward. It was the best teaching the next session from the relapse or the giving into the urge. And he also felt relief that we didn't even have to talk about it. We just moved right on. Now, how did I learn that? I learned that from Greg, because he emphasized that, and I didn't know that. And then I saw how easy it is, because obviously we want people to see their beauty, not what a failure they are. That's the key essence to recovery. Once someone sees their beauty, they're off to the races, because they're smiling. They feel good. And when they feel lousy, just the face is down, and that's the direction where they're going. It's so heavy, 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 heavy. You aren't going to find it in heaviness. I can promise you that. I'm certainly, anyway, can't find it in heaviness and so on. So what you're saying is be gentle with yourself and you did state that actually at the conference, how important it was to be gentle with yourself.
Well, it's vital, because remember the whole reason why somebody wants to use a drug or alcohol or something in the first place is to feel better. So if you're hard on yourself for using, then you're not feeling better, are you? You're feeling worse. And then you're even more likely to have another urge to escape those feelings. It's kind of, it's like I said earlier, it's a habitual thought pattern. It's something that we practice so many times. When I feel this way that I don't like to feel, I reach out for whatever it is that makes me feel better. Some of those things can be healthy. Going for a walk in nature, getting exercise, stuff like that, as long as we're not taking the exercise to an extreme. There are healthy ways to distract ourselves from it, and then there are unhealthy ways. And it's kind of like, think about the last time you really had to think about how to tie your shoes. It's so natural now. You just do it without any thought process to it, any conscious thought process to it. But when you were first learning to tie your shoes, it was one of the most difficult things. And sometimes the laces would come untied and you'd trip and fall, and you'd have to retie them and remember how to do it. But then at one point, it just became natural, because we built that subconscious thought pattern up. And our brains are really efficient at picking up on patterns in our lives and just working them into that automatic process. There's so many things that we do on a daily basis that we don't really consciously think about. And this process is kind of like learning a new way to tie your shoes. So at first, yeah, it's going to be kind of difficult because you're used to the old way. And now we're saying, well, instead of wrapping it around this way and tucking it through, wrap it around the other way and tuck it through. And sometimes you might forget the new way and go back to the old way. And sometimes with the new way, you might not tie it right and they may come untied again, but it's okay. You're moving in that direction of building that new habit. Because what I've found is that it doesn't seem like we can just get rid of an old habit. We have to build a new one to replace it. Nature doesn't like a
isn't that
vacuum.
automatic though, Greg? Like if you have an insight, it comes with a kit, and that
Yeah, with an insight. Anytime we have an insight, that's an automatic change. Like Sydney Banks said, we're only ever a single thought away from an entirely new experience of life. But until somebody finds that thought, it's useful to start building the new habit as best you can. And every time you practice that new habit, you're giving less energy to the old habit. But every time when you step into the old one, and then especially when you beat yourself up over it, you're giving it even more energy and just reinforcing it. So the key is if you accidentally step into the old habit, just step back into the new one as quickly as you can. And don't give it attention to the old one. Just let it go. It doesn't really mean anything. It's not that you're a failure. It's not that you're a screw up. It just simply means that you went back to the old way of tying your shoes. Even though the new way is more effective and comes untied less often, that's really, an insight can happen at any moment. But it doesn't mean that we need to sit around waiting for it. I can wait to win the lottery, or I can, work for a paycheck in the meantime, kind of thing.
Okay, I have one more question, then we're going to open it up to other people. By the way, when reading about the Muslim community, I was touched by how it must be very difficult, because there's a very strong religious and cultural negative attitude towards drinking and being addicted to the Muslim religion, as I understand it, is very beautiful in terms of being a beautiful human being, good qualities that exhibit. How did you experience sort of the way society, your family, and so on approached you with that in a negative way? And then how did you sort of find a peace of mind, or a place where you felt comfortable with yourself in regards to that?
Well, for me, it was the negative part had happened kind of slowly over a number of years, as friends and family members would just kind of stop talking to me. For me, nobody really directly came to me and said, because you're doing this, I don't want to have anything to do with you. But they would just, stop showing up, kind of thing. But what really changed it for me was realizing that in the end, the only thing that really matters, especially for my own recovery and my own happiness, is to focus on my own happiness. And that when I change my habits and behaviors, all of those opinions about me will change. I can't directly change other people's opinions. I can't say, don't think badly about me because I'm, using drugs. Because that's their version of reality. They've decided that somebody who uses drugs is a bad person or whatever. It's their opinion. And when there are people who are close to us, that opinion can feel very heavy. Like you said earlier, that heavy feeling. But bringing a lightness to it is really the key to it, realizing that that's their perception of us. And if we just focus on our own happiness and our own growth and our own connection to that source energy, that all of that other stuff will just take care of itself.
Oh, I love that. That was beautiful, Greg. Very beautiful. Does anyone have a question or an observation or just some input?
I do. Sorry, I've always got something to say, haven't I, Harry? Hi there, Greg. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I've got to say first and foremost, I'm going to say, I've just joined and to say, like, well done you. Like, not even for anything. I just think it's amazing that that kind of alignment that you've kind of conclusion and the alignment within your soul that you've experienced in this. I've kind of forgotten what I was going to say because I was just so wowed by your kind of what you were saying. But what I kind of heard from what you were saying was, I don't know if I should say this, but like for me, it really resonated when you said, and it was kind of like a decision came from within, from the heart, a belief system within the heart, and it just, and once it made sense in your heart, and that conclusion had sort of settled in your heart, like you said, the rest fell into place. And that's kind of what I heard. I'm so sorry. I feel like a bit of a wally now, but yeah, like it was really powerful what you said about that, because you know, I mean, I don't have, well, I do have addictions. I think the whole world has addictions, and in some way. And what it resonated to me is I have kind of like a love addiction. Okay, so it's not the same, but it is kind of like a dependency to feel better, to something else literally gives me my happy feelings. And so for me, it was really powerful to realize that when what you just said, something I heard within myself was that actually whatever it was that resonated in your heart actually is where the transformation happened, and that was what made everything else fall away and sort of put you on that journey to recovery. And then everyone else saw it, because suddenly you were living feelings or thoughts from your heart, and then everyone sort of connected. I don't know, I'm going to stop talking now, but that was something that I kind of heard. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Oh, thank you. No, that's perfect, because honestly, love is the core cause of all addiction issues. And what I believe to be the most common addiction is codependency, relying on others for that love, when in reality, that love should be coming from ourselves. So then we don't feel the need to get it from other people. So when we do, it's just like adding spices to food. It enhances it. Versus that's my only source, is somebody else needs to love me. So that self-love is the key. Like you said, it does come from the heart. When you really truly learn to accept and love yourself and take care of yourself, then the need for other people and things to do it for you drops away. You know, when I work with people with addiction issues, I don't really talk about stopping the addiction. I just talk about starting the self-love, because the addiction will take care of itself. Because otherwise, another thing of like the oneness of addiction, and one of the things that I noticed very quickly in myself and others when I was in Alcoholics Anonymous, was that people would trade addictions. And I was one of them. When I sobered up, suddenly I started smoking more cigarettes and drinking more coffee and eating more donuts at the meetings, and I just traded addictions because I hadn't taken care of that core issue, which is self-love. Until that's handled, we'll just keep switching to another addiction that seems to be more effective.
And it's really deep when you think about it, that the belief that something else can compensate for that, and the simplicity of where this three principles takes us into that oneness of how we experience what it is that we're looking for, or block it with other things. And yeah, it's quite powerful how it does transform. Everything seems to just drop away. So yeah. Thank you.
And what you were talking about from the heart, what I felt you were talking about is the power of an insight, which is basically the thinking that you have in your mind, little mind, stops for a second, and the feelings, the pureness of who you really are, the love that you are, expresses itself. And with that comes a higher level of consciousness and a kick that follows with it. And that's why insight is always so emphasized, because it is really, another word for insight is heart or self-love. You all of a sudden love yourself more because you're thinking less about who you are.
You actually experience the self-love of something bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
So that I think that's the key to this, is that sometimes when you can't love yourself or see yourself amidst all the confusion, with little mind speaking constantly, you then when that transcendence happens, when little mind stops talking and suddenly that belief enters the heart of actually something more powerful, and that belief settles, that's when everything drops away. I think it's the mind is really, as they say, the mind is, it really is about the heart. The heart is where everything is connected. That's where we say the oneness. So in Islam, we say the oneness of Allah it's all about the heart. And when you have limiting beliefs that have taken over, so those beliefs that have entered your mind, and you're seeking refuge from those beliefs in your mind, when you allow the heart to actually believe what the oneness is saying to you, what the truth is, and that belief settles in, that's when you let go of everything else. And that's the place that you want to be. And that's the place that I think every human being from the beginning of time, that wisdom that is within is always pointing us to that. But we use all the other stuff in order to prevent us from reaching that place, as in little mind, the materialism of this world, the feelings that we're running away from. And if we just went into the feelings and allowed to feel the pain and allow that greater consciousness to actually do the work, as they say in many denominations, religion or teachings, let go and let God or let consciousness, let it be. And that's where, when you let it be, little mind has got no power over you, because something bigger is allowed. But when you allow yourself to be dictated by little mind, that's where it all sort of happens. I'm going to stop talking because I feel I'm going to listen to you a little bit more, Greg. Thank you.
I appreciate what you're talking about, especially with the let go and let God. Because that's what I was trying to get at earlier with this, the process of recovery has nothing to do with adding something new. It's letting go of what you already have there, that illusion that's there. So the let go and let God makes a lot of sense. And it brings to mind, Sid would talk a lot about personal mind and divine mind. And what I've come to believe with that is that personal mind is from our brain and the divine mind is from our heart. And modern science has begun to prove that there's actually more and stronger energy coming from our heart center than there is from our brain. It's measurable. And we can influence people around us just by using that heart energy. And an insight is really, look at the word, is to see within. So an insight isn't some magical thing that happens. It's just stop looking outside and start looking in.
It's funny that, isn't it? Because they say the last part of your body to switch off when you are leaving this world is the mind, the brain. It's the last thing to go. And that's strange, because when you think about it, what is little mind except that it's holding on to this world and not allowing you to experience the divine? And yet it's grasping for dear life to stay in this world. It's quite a deep concept, isn't it?
Yeah, because that's the part that's the illusion.
Yeah.
And that's the part that we really can't get away from in this human experience, because we part of the human experience is this body. And the body comes with an identity. It comes with an ego, that little mind. And yeah, it's the last thing to go because it can't go where we're going, if that makes
That's the
sense.
one, isn't it? Oh,
We're
just said it.
we're so in tune to return to source. That's why
Yeah.
we have an internal guidance system that lets us know when we're off track.
Mm.
We
Always.
just misinterpret those signals.
Mm.
One of the things, this is of course very beautiful what we're talking about. But when you were talking, Elia, I hope I pronounced that right. Probably not. One of the quotes that came to my mind from Sid is, "There are not two minds operating separately. There is just one mind used in two different ways." And within that, I see the oneness of life, because I have often, this thing that we hear, we identify with here is still Harry, the separate being, talking to this crowd, when we know actually when the feeling comes in, there's only one mind. And within that, I find a freedom to experience oneness. And so I actually love my mind. I love its creativity, its individuality, and so on. I am not against my mind, but I am definitely against anything that's out of balance within myself, whether if it is I eat too much and my stomach erupts, or I overthink and I can't get to sleep type of thing. But I actually find that the two minds work as one. It's just that I have kind of lost my understanding of how that actually works. And of course, the only way you can actually know that is through your feelings.
Yeah, he talked about that. He talked about aligning the two to become one. And there is that direct neural connection, binaural connection between the heart and the brain. And when we learn to align our thinking with our true selves, then those become one. And it's when we get out of alignment is when we feel off base. That's when we don't feel right. That's like Harry said, that's when we can't sleep because we've got so much going on up here. You know, and that's when we reach out for something to help relieve this and to return to this, you know, to get that alignment again, that connection again.
Amazing. Reminds me of a quote that Rumi said, out between, and I always think of the garden that he talks about, out between the garden, between wrongdoing and right doing, there is a place, I'll meet you there. And for me, that's where the heart goes. So it's between higher consciousness and little mind. And it's the heart that guides you to that certain spot. And it's just, that's just what came to mind when you said that.
That's pure truth.
Is this recorded, by the way? Because I'm going to have to watch this again.
It is.
Really deep. Thank you. And it's Aaliyah, by the way.
Omar will post this to our YouTube channel, and then I'll be making it into a podcast. And it also will be posted on our Addiction, Alcoholism, and Three Principles YouTube channel as well. So just to let you know.
Rumi also said something, and I'm paraphrasing, but it was along the lines of, when an unwanted guest knocks at your door, just open up the back door and let them walk through, and don't serve them tea.
Yeah.
It's the same way with, you know, with our negative thinking. When a thought, because we can't really control which thoughts pop into our heads, but we can control what we do with them. Leave the back door open. Don't serve it tea. Don't ask it to stay. Just let it flow through. Treat it like a noisy car going by.
That's the word he calls it a guest, and a guest that has come. The guest house. That's the poem, The Guest House. One of my favorites.
Yeah, that's right.
So
yeah, that's the idea. Is just let it flow through. It pops up. Don't give it attention. Don't serve it tea. Just let it go. And that can take a little practice. Just becoming, it's about practicing that alignment. It's about getting back into alignment rather than staying out of alignment. And being in alignment ultimately is the answer to every addiction.
That's actually Buddhism, being in a state of balance.
The state of every teaching of this world is as Sid said, is pointing to the same thing. It really is to love divine with the heart and to hold everything else in the hand, and that is the balance. It really is about that. It's quite powerful.
You see, that's so beautiful. The three principles just teach you what the essence of what you prefer, of the way that you express life. But in the end, it's you that's expressing it. This is your expression of life. Even though we use quotes from the Quran or from Muhammad or from whatever it is that we even Sid Banks, it's just your expression of love. That's where the beauty is. The more you express your beauty, Alaya, which by the way is a lot, I'm talking about your spiritual beauty, the more alive you are. The more alive you are, the more you attract good luck. The more you attract good luck, the more you like life. And the less hard you work.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like, oh, it just happens. Wonder what I was doing when it was so difficult.
You know, I asked myself that question. I've been like, what have I been doing for the last 19 years? Like, seriously, what has been going on? And it's like, I could kick myself. I think as I'm going through my own transition, this topic that you were talking about was really important to me, because I think we all have an addiction in some way or another. We're all fighting an addiction, and however it may be. And I kind of realized, like, for the first time in a long time, I could really hear Sid saying, but you have to forgive yourself. You have to forgive yourself. And at that moment that I could forgive myself, I found everything else coming back to me in a way that, and it wasn't the stuff that I felt that I'd ruined. It was myself, my soul. It was really what we call rizq, which is, and rizq is seen as abundance, but abundance of wisdom, abundance of letting go, abundance of just being in the flow of life. And yeah, it's been the most profound journey that that I'm definitely on for myself. So pray everyone else here on this call gets that exact same thing. I mean,
one of the things I want to emphasize with what Alaya was saying for people who listen to this is she wasn't wasting her time when she was going through difficulty. She was learning, she was unfolding, she was evolving. In all my difficult times of confusion and disappointment and so on, I thought a lot of it was wasted. It really felt like nothing had happened for many a year, and I was just stuck in time. But that wasn't true. I was garnishing different things of the puzzle that I needed to hear. See, a lot of the learning is not when you're paying attention to it. It's not about practicing all the time. What it is allowing the spirit to teach you. And it teaches you when you're aware of it and when you're not aware of it. And so once the whole package sort of comes together, what happens is you recognize it's easy to forgive yourself because you recognize you haven't really made any mistakes. You've just been evolving in your own natural spiritual way. And that just takes all the pressure off. Yeah, I have a mess. Yeah, I have bad habits. Yeah, I have that. but the answer was, boy, it was rewarding, interesting, challenging. And it brought me to here. Who cares what the past is? It brought me here. Omar and I are doing this thing. Who cares what he did in the past? Who cares? It's unimportant. All that matters is what we share now. And that makes it so easy. If I don't think, of course, that's the problem. If I don't think, actually, it's just very relaxing journey.
I'm going to say something again. So I'm going to ask a question, Harry. And actually, Greg, maybe you could help with this question that I'm about to ask.
Or anybody else.
No. Yeah, sorry, I will stop talking, I promise, in a little while.
Oh,
But,
no.
but one of the questions that and I don't want to dwell in that, so I hope I'm not playing devil's advocate when I say this, but you know, the consequences, that's the final part. When we start to, when you finally start to let go, and the consequences of all that stuff, that's when you know, when you're caught up in the consequences. I just want to say to everyone, when you get to that place where you start to think, and your body starts to, or the little mind starts to start pulling at all of that side of it, that's when you know you're almost there. That's when you know that the big stuff's about to come, that the letting go really is about to happen. And that's when you let go, everything else comes back. So I just thought I'd just add that little bit to it. Sorry, thank you.
How do you see that, Sharon? How do you, what she just said?
Well, I'm playing the listener today, because my mind is not very quiet today.
Doesn't matter.
No. All of this is still kind of going in my head. I'm not sure what I think.
Okay, well, that's an answer. There's nothing.
But I'm like Alina, and I will be listening to this again because I've heard a lot of things.
Okay, beautiful, beautiful. Well, Greg, you want to give it a shot?
I mean, really, it comes down to what we've been talking about this whole time, which is that self-love and being in alignment with who we truly are. You know, in alignment, we feel good. And out of alignment, we don't. And that's when we start relying on other things to feel better. You know, it's simple. It's just learning to be in alignment with yourself and with that source energy, which is yourself, you know, which is all of us.
Let me give it a shot then. What I feel is, as your level of consciousness rises, everything becomes more impersonal, including the consequences of your own life. And you kind of alluded to that it's part of the process. But I'm actually stating to you, your level jumped, and then the impersonal nature of it was expressed. And that's a milestone, as you said, because it's an indicator. What are the indicators of a higher level of consciousness? One is what you stated, you're more impersonal to what is happening to you personally. That is an automatic reaction. And second one would be the quieting of your mind. You notice your mind is just that much quieter than it was before. And that is an indication of a higher level of consciousness. And of course, the feeling of life. I was just talking to a lady today who very beautiful lady, and she started listening to Sydney Banks's videos, and the feelings that she was expressing were beautiful. The feeling of oneness that she was feeling towards life and the possibilities of life. So you see life with brand new eyes because you have no choice. It just is. And what is it? It's reality. Your reality has changed. So, Alaya, I think you identified an aspect of impersonality. Like, it doesn't matter whether you were addicted or alcoholic or you came from this or you came from that. What is the essence of the three principles is, are you psychologically creating a barrier for yourself, or are you psychologically freeing yourself? And of course, that is beautiful. So all I can see with what you said is keep doing it.
Yeah.
Keep
And
doing
what are levels of consciousness other than indications of how in alignment we are? You know, a higher level of consciousness means we're more in alignment. There's that oneness again, that simplicity of it. We have that internal guidance system to let us know how in alignment we really are.
So when Greg and I, or Greg by himself, teaches or has a client, there's not a lot of talk about addiction and alcoholism and all that stuff. There's more about what we've just talked about. People want to learn to be happy and content. They're not really interested in getting rid of the habit. Of course they want to get rid of the habit. And when Sid talked in 1980s, there is an audio that we put out on our YouTube channel and also on our podcast channel of Sid talking about thought and alcoholism. And I would listen to it because it was a bit of a surprise to me of what he talked about. Because I was there and there was a question that popped up. And the guy said to Sid, well, don't you want them to get rid of the alcoholism and the or drug addiction? And he looked at the guy totally like, well, what have I been talking about for the last hour? But he never mentioned addiction or alcoholism. He just was talking about truth and the wisdom within. So he said, of course I do. But he was shocked that the guy couldn't pick up what he thought he'd been talking about it nonstop. But all he was talking about was spiritual truth. And when I listened to this talk, with 16 minutes, Alaya, and I recommend you listen to this one. It's because, of course, it's from Sid and it's not that usual.
Send it to Omar and then he can send it to me, hopefully, if you don't mind, or remind him. Sorry, yeah, I shouldn't be asking for little bonuses.
Absolutely, absolutely. And for anybody else, I would highly just go on YouTube, Addiction, Alcoholism, and Three Principles, and it's
okay, right. Okay, I'll look there
on the YouTube channel, and it's there. But all he talked about was change thought.
That's it.
That's
the thing is, my father had this. He had the addiction to alcohol, and when I looked at him, that's all I could see. Someone who really couldn't actually. And his death actually was what started me on this journey. And I always thought, oh God, this is like proper Sod's law, that I would discover and understand this after you've gone. And maybe we could have, but he was probably the most loving man that I've ever met. The most loving man, had so much to give, but could not see the truth within himself, and we're so blessed to have this understanding. We really are. Generations to come,
And I will suggest to you that he could see the love within himself, but it's just he also had a bad habit. I have worked a lot with the indigenous people, Native American Indians, and the wisest Indian I ever worked with or became friends with was Stan Peters. He was a vicious alcoholic. But boy, when he talked about the old days, it was just like Sid. It was just pure truth. So he stopped drinking when I came to the territory because he knew I was coming to stay with him. And when he wasn't drunk, he was unbelievably wise. And he taught me a ton. Stuff that I had no, just feelings. And he shared with me in a way. His son came and visited, said, "Why are you only drumming with Harry?" And he said, "Well, no, just Harry. The feelings. That's the feelings." So alcohol is just no different than overeating or et cetera, or shopping too much, or it's just the way you've expressed your bad luck, I guess you would call it, to have had such a heavy addiction. But doesn't mean he didn't know his love in himself. He knew, and you expressed it, and he shared that with you. And that's the most beautiful thing in the world. I love my kids. I haven't met a dad who doesn't.
See, but that's something that I experienced differently, was that when I was, really active in my addiction, was I was able to express that love to other people, but I just couldn't accept it for myself. That's what the disconnection is. Just because somebody is an alcoholic doesn't mean they can't express love. It just means that they're not accepting it. It's not fully.
Yeah,
Not fully.
that was his thing. Yeah, that was his thing. He really was the life and soul. He gave so much. And the irony is, when he used to come and see me, it was the only time he wouldn't drink. He wouldn't drink when he came to see me because he knew I didn't like it. But the ultimate way of him showing love, I don't think there's anyone that could ever look at him and think that this wasn't the most loving man. And I just used to think, how do you not see it? Why don't, well, as you said, he does, but yeah, they are, he was possibly one of the most capable, and I admire him so much. I had so much respect and love for him because I saw someone who I actually sometimes used to think you can't actually see yourself. You've transcended the ego. Do you know what I mean? You're just like, whoa, out there. But yeah, powerful.
Good. Well, we're kind of coming to is there any final question or so from anyone? And if not, we'll ask Greg to sort of sum up a final thought and so on. And then Omar, I would like you to finish with saying a few things, and then we'll call the show over. Interesting show, eh? Yeah. Have you enjoyed it, Greg? Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I just want to say this is really touching. A lot of stuff I'm just not thinking about it. I've heard so many things, very touching. Thank you to everyone.
Yeah, thanks for joining. And just remember what we talked about today. Don't get caught up in the words. Like Sid said, look for the feeling. That feeling that you have when you're in alignment is you. That's your natural state of being when you don't do the things that take you away from it. So be gentle with yourself. That's the key. Love yourself. When we truly love ourselves, we can't do things to ourselves that are harmful.
That's for sure. That's the way it works. That's the way it works. The first thing I ever said when I came into my first teaching of addiction and on Main and Hastings, which is the heart. Vancouver has a tremendous amount of homeless people, tremendous amount of drugs and alcoholics, and they come in to this place. The first thing I said to people was, lighten up. Whew, it's heavy in here. I can't, and the next thing to go with what Elia was talking about was how spiritual these people were. I couldn't believe it. they were humble, you know, they were open. They wanted something new, but they had experienced in their altered states of reality a tremendous amount about spirituality. And I was quite touched by that and quite relieved about that. And so these are beautiful, beautiful people. That's what I can tell you. Beautiful, beautiful people. They deserve our best. And luckily for us, we have some teachings that can assist them, not just to cope with their addiction, but the whole thing back to normal, happy, content, releasing their unlimited potential for who they are. That's all, just their unlimited potential. And that's the greatest asset the humanity has, people. Not oil, not money, people. And we're not releasing enough of that love and understanding. So, Omar?
Yeah. Well, that was a lot of juice in there. You know, I've decided today to not really share, but just to listen, because you both been talking about this for a long time, and I just wanted to listen and learn, and it was just amazing listening to you both and our participants as well, sharing their experiences. It's been amazing. Yeah, thank you, Greg, for coming in and sharing your wisdom, and so good to meet you finally.
Same here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone, and Harry, of course, sharing their wisdom and insights. So see you soon in 2 weeks for another episode. And thanks for coming all.
Great, yeah, great. Omar, let's talk for a few seconds after, yeah. And yeah.
Sure.
And anybody, just say anything you like about Greg or anything. He likes that.